In my lifetime, I have been on countless great roller coasters. While rides like El Toro and Steel Vengeance may be the best of them, they aren't always my favorites. Favorite coasters can be favorites for a number of reasons. Maybe they're significant to you, or you have a certain memory attached to them, or maybe it's just a coaster that you seem to love for no particular reason. Today, I'm going to count down my 10 favorite roller coasters. These range from intense large-scale coasters to small, mild coasters, and in the end, I have a reason to love all of them. So without further ado, let's get into the list. Before I begin, make sure you like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, as it would mean a lot. I put a lot of effort into these videos and you guys are my motivation. Number 10. Riddler Revenge at Six Flags New England. My first inverted coaster just cracks the top 10. Yes, an SLC makes my top 10 favorite roller coasters. First of all, it's nostalgic. I rode this when it was Mind Eraser and it had the original restraints. The first time I rode it, I got off and did it 3 more times. I enjoyed it that much. The headbanging was already pretty minimal on this coaster compared to some of the other SLCs that I've heard of. But then in 2017, they put vest restraints on the coaster, eliminating all headbanging. Sure, the ride is still a little jerky, but it's actually really enjoyable if you look past the bad transitions. Another reason why this makes my list is because of my marathon of it. On New Year's Eve in 2019, I rode this coaster 8 times in a row with my friend Adrenaline Central. Even though the coaster isn't that good, it has that memory, and I love it for that. Number 9. Maverick at Cedar Point. Maverick is for sure the best roller coaster that I've ridden, but best and favorite are 2 different things. I love Maverick for its powerful airtime moments, intensity, snappy inversions and transitions, and launch. It really is as simple as that. Maverick is one of the most fun roller coasters in the world. I rode Maverick more times than any other coaster at Cedar Point. I rode it front, middle, and back, and they were all phenomenal. I just wanted to keep getting back in line to ride it again and again, and that's why Maverick is among my favorites. Number 8. Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta Texas. This was the first launch coaster that I ever rode, and that launch caught me off guard. I was not expecting the launch to be that intense, but as soon as we took off out of the station, I loved it. This is such a disorienting ride. When you're in the spaghetti bowl, there's track and supports everywhere. The inversions are pretty fun, and I found the Cobra roll to be pretty intense. Another reason I favor Poltergeist is for its theming. The theming on this ride is absolutely terrible, and I love it. The coaster is obviously ghost themed, and Six Flags clearly put the least amount of effort possible into theming it, and it shows. The queue and station are just covered in cheap Halloween decorations, and all of it is just so bad, yet I love it so much. Number 7. Catwomans Whip at Six Flags New England. This was my very first roller coaster, so obviously I love it. There's more to it than just that though. This coaster is genuinely fun, and it's one of my favorite family/kiddie coasters I've been on. The ride is filled with large swooping turns and a nice setting. It's kind of tucked away near Superman, and it rarely has a line, so you can get on this coaster pretty much whenever you want, unless it's down, which I have actually never seen, so this coaster is very reliable. The best part about it is how stupidly long the train is. It has a total of 20 cars. With this, the whip in the back row is pretty great in places like the drop. In the end though, I love most things about this coaster. It has a nice setting, a good layout, it's reliable, and it was my very first coaster ever. Number 6. Raptor at Cedar Point. This was one of the first coasters that I rode during my trip to Cedar Point, and as soon as I got off of my first ride, I knew I loved it. I came back 3 more times just in that day, and I wanted more. First of all, this coaster is just beautiful. It dominates the front section of the midway, and the twisty green track is gorgeous. Second of all, this ride is pretty intense. Every element on Raptor is just back-to-back, non-stop intensity, snappy inversions, and fast-paced transitions. After my first day at Cedar Point, I knew this was one of my favorite coasters, but after the sun set at my second day at the park, they turned the mid-course off, allowing the train to absolutely rip through the second half. The ride was running so fast that when the train went through the first corkscrew, the structure shook like a wooden coaster. I got 2 back-to-back rides with this with my friend Kitsos from Coasterland in the back row, and it was amazing. So that memory will always live with this coaster for me and keep it as one of my favorites. Number 5. Gemini at Cedar Point. I'm not really sure what it is about Gemini. To start, you have the great sustained floater air time, then the glossy smooth ride experience, and then the janky aero transitions, which are always fun, especially the ones in and out of the helix. And speaking of that helix, it's insane. I have no idea why, but Gemini's final helix is extremely intense, and it's a great way to end the ride. Another thing is that when I went to Cedar Point, Gemini wasn't actually dueling, so I'm sure if it did, then the ride would be even more fun than it was when I went. And if it's dueling when I eventually go back to Cedar Point, I can get the credit I missed from the right side. I think the reason I like Gemini is because of the old feel to it. The ride is huge, and despite being a hybrid, it manages to feel like a wooden roller coaster, but with a smooth ride and great airtime. Number 4. Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. This Intamin mega coaster is literally the definition of an amazing layout. You have the sustained airtime in the first half, and extremely intense helixes in the second half. This ride is also located directly parallel to the Connecticut River, so when you're 208 feet in the air, you can look straight down at the water, and it's actually pretty scary. Then you have that drop. In the front row, it almost feels like a dive coaster. You're so high up in the air, then you plummet over 200 feet below the ground, and it feels like you're falling forever. Another reason why this is one of my favorite coasters is because of all of the cool rides I've gotten on it. I remember my first ride on it. I was blown away when we hit the brake run, and it was my number 1. I also got to ride this coaster during the fireworks, when I went to Six Flags' 4th of July event. The ride operator came out of the booth and gave me 2 inches of room for airtime. It was amazing. Another cool ride I had on this was with a GP friend. It was her first time on the coaster, and she was scared to death, but as soon as we came up into the first airtime hill, she was having a great time. Superman the Ride holds so many memories with me that have led it to become one of my favorite coasters ever, and I'm so happy to have this coaster at my home park. Number 3. King Dakar at Six Flags Great Adventure. King Dakar is just one of those coasters that you cannot get a bad ride on. There is that unbeatable launch, the insane height, crazy twisted drop, intense pullout, and massive airtime hill into the brakes. This coaster is only about 20 seconds long, and in my opinion, none of that time is wasted, and I actually prefer King Dakar over Top Thrill Dragster. To put it simply, King Dakar is just one of my favorite things, not even just roller coasters, but things. I love King Dakar during the day, night, in the front, middle, and back. It's that good. I once waited 3 hours for this coaster, and I would 100% do it again. Number 2. Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. I have been on 3 of RMC's creations, all of which are in my top 10 overall. Each of these coasters absolutely delivers, with strong airtime and great use of the previous coaster's layout. The best example of using an old layout, in my opinion, would be Wicked Cyclone. The old Cyclone had a bland layout, filled with high-up curves and a couple of airtime moments. RMC made use of this by bringing those high-up turns low to the ground, turning the shallow first drop into an insane steep descent to the ground, and filling the ride with over 10 airtime moments. Everything RMC did to this coaster is perfect. This coaster looks like it shits on most of the smaller RMCs like Twisted Cyclone, Joker, and Twisted Colossus. Another reason this is one of my favorites is because of the night rides. Riding this coaster during the day is one thing, but at night when it's hauling, it's like a different coaster. I remember riding this twice after my firework ride on Superman that I mentioned earlier. Not only did we get last ride of the night, but we also rode twice in a row, and the ride was hauling. The airtime was insane in places like the Double Down and the Outer Bank, and it had to be one of my favorite coaster experiences ever. Wicked Cyclone has not only had this memory with me, but many others, so it definitely deserves to be near the top of my list. There is one coaster, though, that I favor more than Wicked Cyclone. Honorable mention: Thunderbolt at Six Flags New England. Thunderbolt is the definition of a classic wooden coaster. It's not too tall, not too fast, it's a little rough, and it gives a little airtime. Not only this, but Thunderbolt was my first ever wooden coaster, so it has some significance for me as an enthusiast. The ride may be a little outdated, and there are much better coasters in the park, but if it doesn't have a long line, which isn't very common, then I'll make sure to ride this thing. If you don't get put in a wheel seat, then the ride isn't very rough at all. In addition to this, if you get room, then it's pretty easy to get airtime on this. The Double Down has some good floater, and the Bunny Hill before the last turn has some surprising sustained airtime. Overall, Thunderbolt is just one of those classic wooden coasters, and I'm so grateful to have one at my home park. Number 1. Boulder Dash at Lake Compounds. I don't know what it is about this coaster. Honestly, it's everything. The terrain setting, sustained airtime, intense, rough experience, and great trains make this ride my favorite. I'm pretty sure I rode this more times than any other coaster in the year 2020, and that's simply because I love it. This coaster is so re-rideable, and even when it isn't running well, I still love it. The back row is insane, with roughness, airtime, and laterals, and the front row is just as good, providing a pretty smooth ride, even more airtime, and an amazing view. In the end, there's just something I love about Boulder Dash, and every time I ride it, I get off wanting more. This coaster is just that good to me. Those are my 10 favorite roller coasters. These coasters may not be the best, but I still love them for what they are. Maybe I have a great memory attached to one, or maybe there's just something about a ride that I love. Nevertheless, all 10 of these coasters are great in my opinion, and they are all special to me. Tell me what your favorite coasters are in the comments below, and make sure to leave a like on the video and maybe even subscribe, because it would mean a lot. Anyways, this is ET Coasters, signing off.